Before we get into tonight's show, I want to give a quick shout out to Elite Mounts in Salina, Ohio. They make top-notch 100% American-made tool organization gear that fits just about any brand of handheld power tools, batteries, and chargers, along with other specialty mounts for your home workshop needs. You can check them out at elitemounts.com. And the guys over there were nice enough to offer a 10% discount for all my listeners. Just use the code Bigfoot10 at checkout. Enjoy the new episode format, thanks to Elite Mounts.
Out in the woods, shadows creep slow. Footprints deep where no man should go. Cold winds howl through hollers and brooks. Whispers of Bigfoot in the way it looks. Myths, monsters, and bullets in the night. Under a pale moon, strange glowing light. Truth out there like a blade it cuts. Myths, monsters, and bullets run amok.
Welcome back to Myths, Monsters, and Mullets. I am your host, John Methenkamp. On tonight's show, we have Val Zavala. He is a Bigfoot researcher. Would you consider yourself a researcher?
Yeah, researcher, data miner, all that good stuff. Not an expert.
Nobody's an expert. I don't believe anybody's an expert.
No.
But we met on Facebook, I believe in a Bigfoot group, started chit-chatting, and I convinced you to come on the show. So, Val, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to my listeners?
Well, first of all, thank you very much, John, for having me on. I appreciate it. I don't mind doing these chit chats. It's relaxing to me. I find it a lot more accommodating than standing on my feet on a microphone in front of a listless, quiet audience. I'm happy.
Yeah. I like this format. A little more personal. Like I said, I do a live show, and sometimes having extra people in the room makes it a little hard to concentrate on my guests. So I really do like the one-on-one interviews. But you are out of Michigan, correct?
Yes, I'm out of Michigan, and I'm married. I've got grandchildren. I've raised 2 daughters. I actually live 6 miles south of Detroit city limits. Hardly the forest, the Bigfoot area that we know of. But I spent 25 and a half years in law enforcement, working federal, state, county, and local law enforcement. When I wasn't working on the clock, I was a licensed private investigator, and I was featured on A&E History Channel as a subject matter expert. That's me in the kind of stuff that I did. But I was an avid reader. I loved it. I loved history. There was something that happened in my childhood that I recall. In 1965, I was born and raised in Monroe County, southern Michigan, southeast Michigan. And it was a case of a Sasquatch allegedly coming out of a field one dark hot summer's night, and approaching a car driven by a young 16-year-old new driver who panicked, locked the brakes up. And in 1965, there was no air condition. The air condition consisted of rolling that window down on these hot, humid nights, these Michigan steamy nights. You live around the water, John. Everything is humid. When you got
Right.
hot weather, you got humid weather. One of the reasons why I never wanted to work down in Florida, because I couldn't fathom walking around all day with sweat all the way down to my waist, smelling like a mule, like a horse, like a workhorse. I can't do that.
I get that. One of my favorite sayings is fat and hot don't get along, so that's why I don't
No,
live in the South.
no, no, not this boy. So that was very, very close to my house. And that scared a lot of people. In 1965, I'm listening to the Beatles. I don't want to listen to monsters and, people going outside with pitchforks and baseball bats and knives and shotguns and stuff like that. 1965 was all about cultural revolution. It was hippies, it was war, it was civil rights. There was a lot of stuff going on. And now we got a monster running around loose, in the town. In 1965, it was nothing to take your child out on these dark country roads, and that's how they learned how to drive. There was no police out there to wag their finger at you or nothing. That's the way life was. A lot more simpler. So as a seasoned veteran police officer, I come back after I retire looking at this stuff with a critical eye. And I'm looking at the news reports, I'm looking at everything that I could find. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff that was said and done then that you wouldn't do now, that you don't see in modern media journalism and stuff. I'm talking about 1965. The sheriff of each county, and I don't think that it necessarily ends with Monroe County, Michigan, but all over the United States, every county, every sheriff knows their constituency. They know their county. They can tell you who died, who was cheating on who had a baby. Look at you laugh. This is true. They knew everything. They knew who went to jail.
Like I told you before, my family has a lot of law enforcement in it. Let's put it that way.
Yes. So back then, they even put the addresses of people, the home addresses. They don't do that anymore. And so I went back and I looked at this stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, man, you can't get away with this kind of stuff now. You can't just tell somebody that alleges they were assaulted, we're not going out there because we don't believe that happened. We're not going to go out there and investigate that. You don't do that. So there was a lot of this stuff that went on in 1965. They talked about a lie detector test. Well, the lie detector test is pretty old. And if it was 1965, the technology was probably 1925. And you're going to tell somebody they're a liar and stuff like that. The stuff doesn't work. So this is the way that progressed over the months, the ensuing months. Yeah, there was a lot of people on the expressway, from Ohio too, all over. Everybody wanted to come to Monroe County in 1965, in August 1965, to look for a monster. And it was quite the carnival. But I'm telling you, if a producer came along and wanted to produce a movie, a comedy movie like the Coen brothers, they're extremely good Hollywood producers. I love their movies because the kind of movies that they produce, they do it to make a person think. And if you have any idea of arts in theater and stuff like that, you would recognize a lot of these motifs. Motifs are like clues to a gumshoe guy, to any detective, private eye. Motifs are little signals and little symbols that are used in the arts to tell you, the viewer, what's coming. For instance, when you watch a movie and the movie seems to be the camera seems to go above a person standing on the ground, that's the signal that that person's going to die in this movie. That's what's going to happen to him. Little things like that. The bigger point that I'm trying to make is that coming back and looking at all this stuff with different eyes in 2020, in the 21st century, there's a lot of stuff that I've seen that wouldn't necessarily fly now, today, in modern day, as we see it. And so that's what I hope to bring to the field of Bigfoot research and stuff.
So when you're looking at these cases, I've been seeing on social media and things like that the Detroit area, like that southeast Michigan area, has an uptick in Sasquatch reports. Are you seeing that?
Yes, and I don't want to sit here and blow my own horn, but anybody that knows me or knows of my name, they will recognize Michigan Bigfoot reports and data, Gumshoe Guy's Corner. That's me. I have the largest Bigfoot database in Michigan that I know of. There could be somebody that pops up and says, that's me, but I'm telling you, what I seen and what I experienced in 2014 in Michigan set me on this path that I'm on today. I had the experience of 1965, the Monroe Monster, which left a pretty young 16-year-old girl with a black eye in a black and white picture that went around the world and collected all this notoriety and this news and stuff. And now here I am in the 21st century going back and looking at this with a critical eye and to have my own experience. I'm not from Missouri. I've never been to the Show Me State, but when I retired and got with Bob Daigle from Michigan, and I asked him, I says, can I go out with you? What is this business about Bigfoot Sasquatch? Because quite frankly, I've heard of Bigfoot before, like anybody, with a brain and, between their eyes and their ears and stuff, they would know that too. But the only interaction I had with the Bigfoot was on one of those fish wrap papers at the checkout corner at the grocery store. I got pregnant by Bigfoot and all this kind of stuff. But I'm asking Bob Daigle, I says, can I go out with you? Is there Bigfoot Sasquatch? I'm a gumshoe guy. I am led and I'm curious about stuff. And he told me, yeah, sure. I was out July 19th, 2014, Washtenaw County. Washtenaw County is the home of the U of M, Michigan Wolverine football group. This is a state park. It's called Waterloo State Park, not far from the big house, as they call it, in Ann Arbor. And 50, 60 miles from my home. And certainly enough, we were out all day long, just like the weather that I was talking about in August during the Monroe Monster. Very, very hot, humid. I don't know about you, but I complain when there's flies and mosquitoes. And I got an empty stomach. You got those hangry pangs and stuff. So we started out. We were out all day long walking. We cross a agricultural field, and you don't mind me sharing this with you, do you, John?
No, I want to hear it.
Yeah, we cross this agricultural field that I believe the state leases this land to farmers and stuff. They grow some crop and they share some with the state, and they keep the other part to their for their livestock and stuff. So we're crossing this. I think it was a soybean field that particular year. And we head into this marshy area, near a lake called Lake Winnewawa. For real, that's the name of the
If it
lake.
wasn't coming from you, I would think that somebody just made that up. That's
No,
out of Dr. Seuss.
no, that's a real word. And so we walk into the thick trees, and for a moment we pause because Bob says, "Val, is it raining now?" Well, no, it's not raining. It can't be raining. It was bright and sunny and very, very hot. But he says, "What's that falling from the trees?" There's things that are trickling through the leaves. And we realized, and I looked at him and I says, "Well, it's acorns. There's acorns falling on us." But there's no acorn trees around our immediate area. So we continued on walking, and I'm telling you, the mosquitoes and the flies, I've never seen the hordes of flies like this before. This is something out of a horror movie. And I'm just, I know we went through 2 cans of off bug spray. And you really have to hear me complain about this to get the full impression here. But we continued walking, and then out of nowhere, we hear this large crack. And I'm talking about, it's not a toothpick, it's not a twig, it's a large, thick branch of something that cracked. Very loud, echoes in the woods, and we pause again. And of course, Bob looks at me and he says, "Did you hear that?" And I said, "Yeah." "Well, what was that?" And I says, "I don't know. Sounds like a large stick or something, a branch or something." We walk again and we hear it again. Boom. And so now we're on edge. Our red flags are up. We continue forward. We come to an area where a very, very large tree had dropped. That should have been the flies, the thick flies, the large fallen tree. That should have alerted both of us, skilled Bigfoot researchers. So we look at this thing. On the other side of the tree is a large, looked like a large pile of brush or bramble bush or something that was cored out in the center like a cave. And it was very long and it was very big. Well, neither one of us carried a flashlight. And I'm staying on the opposite side of the tree. Bob scooches over to the side where the alleged Bigfoot nest is. And he's on his hands and knees now. And he's looking, trying to see if there's anything in there. Don't know what we're going to do if we seen something in there. But in any event, I'm looking around. I'm looking up in the trees. I'm looking around. And I catch movement in my peripheral vision. And I felt those pricklies. I felt those familiar tingling sensation in your neck that something's not right here. Nothing. And so I took my cheap camera. I mean, I carried a cheap camera. It was a digital camera, but it was a cheap Kodak camera, not much bigger than my phone. I took it, I put it on photos, on pictures, and I swung around in a 100-degree arc, snapping pictures as I went. Because, I mean, I've done this in law enforcement a lot. At scenes of crimes and accidents and stuff like that. That's how you identify witnesses or suspects. And I see this beast, this individual, all hairy. The color of the hair was the color of Carhartt. You're familiar with that. You're a working man, you know.
Well, my boss may disagree with you, but I do clock in.
Yeah, but that's the color of the hair, reddish brown, almost I would say like a deer. But this thing was about 13 feet off the ground. It was on the side of a tree, either coming up or going down. I don't know which. But by the appearance of this thing, and I'm telling you, with my big brown eyes, I looked at that thing, and the first impression that I had, the first utterance that came out of my mouth in shock was, "What the F? Are you kidding me already?" And I'm not the type of person to say a lot of swear words and stuff. I mean, that's just not my style. But that came out of my mouth. "What the F? Are you kidding me? You got to be kidding me already." And I thought it was a man dressed like everybody else. I thought it was a man dressed in a ghillie. But it can't be possible because it's so big. This thing was 9 feet tall, 8.5, 9 foot tall, at least.
Yeah.
Completely hairy, but for the face, John, it had very little facial hair. But other than that, it was abnormal. It was a freak. And so my next instinct was to provoke it because I thought it was a man. I still thought it was a man. I can't grasp what I'm seeing with reality. This can't be real. I mean, everybody, the grocery store said it was fake. I mean, I seen that in the newspaper, in that fish wrap newspaper. But here I am looking at something that's blinking its eyes at me, and I'm calling it a freak. I said, "You freak, you. You freak." And I'm strapped. Yes, I got my Smith & Wesson next to me, strapped to me. I always did. And "You freak, you." And there was no emotion. I smelled nothing, no odor. I heard no vocalizations. But something strange happened, John. For some reason, and I was familiar with this. I used to read a lot of these different types of books and stuff, near-death experience and stuff like that. I had an experience during a head-on car collision back in 2000. Everything that occurred at that time appeared to me to be in slow motion. You heard of people talk about near-death experience. And when you're in that moment and you're in that time, everything slows down and you're seeing everything in clips, like you're looking at photos, individual photos. At that moment in 2000, I could see the driver of the truck that struck our vehicle. But I could even see the blemishes, the chrome on the front of the car, and for some reason, I felt as though my mind went into survival mode, like I'm calculating physics, time, space, distance. Am I going to survive this, or am I going to die in this? Do I have a chance to live? Well, according to these calculations, and these are going on in my head, I'm not the type of mathematics expert, but this is what I felt. And then I was pretty relieved to know that I'm going to survive this. And then there was the crash, the loud noise, and blackness, darkness. In that moment, again, I'm going from 2000 to 2014. I felt the same familiar oddity. I'm thinking. There's no voice. I'm not speaking to anything now. I'm thinking. I'm lucid in thought. And yet I feel as though I'm communicating with something. I don't understand this, but I know that whatever I'm feeling, I'm under the influence of something. Some people call it infrasound. Some people laugh and ridicule and laugh and mock about that, but when they experience it, they'll know. And whatever it was that I encountered, that I felt, it was very, very powerful. I knew this. I could feel it. And it was as though something in thought was communicating with me, and I'm thinking, and I'm talking back with it again because I'm thinking. And it was so confusing because it was almost like there was more than one person there talking to me. And I couldn't understand why is it, if you ever walk into a group of men, I'm talking about men, just strangers, say like on a street corner, and I'm a pretty talkative guy. I don't, I don't, I'm not shy about chit chatting with people. I don't care. I don't know any strangers, but that's the way I am. But I've, been in law enforcement a long time. I had to talk to people. But I know when you walk up to a group of strangers, the impression that you get is, some of these people in this group are standoffish. They don't know who you are. They don't know where you're coming from, what you want, what your motive is. They're suspicious of you. But in this case, out in the woods, after seeing that, I'm getting these thoughts, these confusing barrage of questions, and like for instance, who are you? Who are you? What do you do? And the constant staring. It took me a
So
while.
can I interrupt you just for 1 second? So when you're hearing this, like it was like complete sentences. It wasn't just like.
It was thought. It was in thought.
Okay.
It's hard to explain, but I've known. And what's interesting about what I do is, I'm reading these reports, and I see some reports exactly like this. And I know it wasn't me that wrote these reports. This is what other people experience too. And just to put a footnote on this, unbeknownst to me, somebody from the UK took my photo that I posted. I was able to recover 3 pictures of this thing, 3 or 4 pictures of this thing. Don't pin me down. 3 or 4 pictures is what I salvaged from this camera. When I posted this online, somebody from the UK took my photo back to the UK and analyzed it. I guess they were trying to determine whether or not I was a hoaxer. Was Val hoaxing this? Did he use CGI on this? Anybody that goes on my Facebook group site can see this picture. But he sends the photo back to me and apologizes. I'm sorry I took this, but here it is. Here's your picture back. Oh, and by the way, here's another picture that we wanted to show you. We magnified to show you that besides the beast that you've seen on the tree there, they confirmed that there was a second one. I seen a second one, a blonde-haired Sasquatch in a tree next to the one that I seen, but my camera didn't pick this up. They verified this, but they said there was also 4 others on the ground all around you, laying on the ground,
cow.
Crouched down. Yes. And they pointed them out. They showed it to me. So during this interaction, this experience, that's a multiple animal experience. There's over 1,000 of these across North America. Not everybody has the opportunity to see more than one Sasquatch, but when you see multiple animals like that, that's pretty significant. So there were 6 in this group I wasn't aware of. The 2 that I seen, and I got a picture of one. Those are some pretty good odds. Wow. But the takeaway from this is what I want to share with you. There's no doubt in my mind that the beast seen my weapon on the side. And it was the staring in the eyes that really felt creepy to me. The only time that I felt a cessation, a receding of these feelings, this foreboding feeling, was when I thought in my head, John, you know what? When you and I were just embryos, just babies in our mother's womb, God gave us free will. The moment I thought that, I felt some relief. I felt this receding feeling, like it was going back. And I told Bob at that time, I says, we have to leave. We have to go, brother. He says, Val, I can't hear you. I said, no. I said, watch me. We have to leave now. We have to go now. We got to go. No, Val, I want to look in here. I want to look in that Bigfoot nest and see. I said, Bob, we got to go. We have to go. We're not wanted here. We have to go. And he could not, at the moment, he could not understand what the urgency was in my voice. I said, we have to go. We left pretty much in the same direction we came in. As soon as we stepped out of the tree line into that agricultural field, we stopped and paused and looked at this large human-like foot impression in the hard, dry clay of Michigan. And we stopped long enough to take a picture of it and measure it. And I told Bob at that point, I said, Bob, if that thing comes out of that tree line on all four legs, I says, I'm going to have a heart attack. I'm just telling you right now. That's what's going to happen. I don't want to see that thing come out of that woods. What I seen, I don't want to see come out of that woods on all fours. I said, just get me back to my car. I want to go home. I got to go home and think about what I just seen. Well, what I was telling him in so many words was, I want to go home and take that memory chip, that memory card out of my camera and throw it in my computer and verify what I thought I saw. And as soon as I got home, I uploaded those pictures. And oh my God, there it is. Live, living in color. The Sasquatch that doesn't exist. And so that put me on the path to reaching out to other people that had similar experiences, because I can't be the only one. And before this occurred in July 19th, 2014, I was happy just lurking on Facebook, just being anonymous. Don't have to give up my name, my ugly face, and any of that stuff. But I decided, because a lot of people knew me. I was in the news and stuff. A lot of people know me, my friends, my relatives. What are they going to think? All this kind of stuff. It came to the point where I said, the heck with this. You know what? I'm going to create a Facebook group site and invite everybody. Share with me your experiences. I can't be the only one. Lo and behold, hundreds of thousands of reports later. By the way, Michigan has, that I know of, over 2,400 reports.
Wow. And
just recently, had the opportunity to chit-chat this past June. I had the opportunity to chit-chat with Matt Moneymaker. I've never spoken to him before. And you know what? I found the man to be very, very cool. I mean, we laughed, we giggled, we told jokes. He's an intelligent man, and I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the stimulation, the intelligent jousting back and forth. But in June, this past June, May and June this year, there was another Bigfoot report that popped up, and guess where that happened, John? In Monroe County. You remember what I told you about the 1965 Monroe monster?
Yeah.
Yes. So about 7 miles from that location, there's another Bigfoot report sighting. Somebody contacts BFRO. My friend, who is a retired special agent, federal agent, contacts me. He says, Val, you want to come down here and check this out with us? And I did. Met up with him and the BFRO guy. And we went down there, and I listened to the interview, listened to the man and his son describe what they seen. But what I heard them describe, John, was something I've seen hundreds of times. I've read hundreds of times. Same stuff. But the fact of the matter was that this occurred about 7 miles from 1965 Monroe Monster case that I remember as a child. The more stunning part to this is this more recent May-June Bigfoot report in Monroe County, Michigan, occurred in a place called Plum Creek. all swampy, wooded, heavily wooded area. But guess what? That was also out the back door of my another childhood home. I'm familiar with this. But that's not all. In February 1812 and 1813, there was a place in Monroe County near River Raisin. All of this, your audience, can look up, and I encourage you to do this. There was what they called the River Raisin Massacre, where over 600 people died, were massacred, killed in the war of 1812 against the British, the Americans, and the Native Indians. And some of the survivors to that massacre fled over the frozen river that night, heading south. They thought they were going to flee to Toledo, Maumee, Ohio, for safety, and they were hunted down in a place called Plum Creek, and they were murdered, killed right there. So I see this a lot in my study and my research, where Sasquatches revisit places they're very familiar with. And that place, that particular point, Plum Creek, is also the location of another Bigfoot report back in the 1900s. These are not, I don't believe in coincidences, my friend. There's no such thing as coincidences. None whatsoever. You talk about Michigan having large numbers of Sasquatch sightings and encounters. None of this, and I've got a map out there, a spot map, what we call in law enforcement a spot map. Each dot represents a single incident. I've got a spot map out there. If you look at the darkest concentration of those black dots, they coincide with early history mounds. Are you familiar with the mound builders? Yes,
Yeah,
brother.
absolutely.
They coincide with this. Again, I go back to the same thing that I said earlier. These have an uncanny habit of occurring around cemeteries and places like this. This is a fact. You want to know about Bigfoot research, and people want to know, if they stop giggling and laughing long enough, they'll see that this really is a deep, deep rabbit hole. A deep rabbit hole. There was a
Absolutely.
time in Michigan where the three largest tribes, Native American tribes, the Council of Fires, which were the Ottawa, the Potawatomi, and the Chippewa, or the Ojibwa, as we call it. The French couldn't pronounce Chippewa. The French couldn't pronounce Ojibwa, so they called them Chippewa. So the three largest groups in Michigan, the Council of Fires, got together long, long time ago. And they wanted to form an alliance. And the alliance was to annihilate the prairie people. Well, when I first read this, I couldn't understand, what are the prairie people? Who are the prairie people? I mean, I'm from Michigan, and that's not exactly a place where I would consider prairie. When I think of prairie, I think of South Dakota, Missouri,
Kansas.
someplace out there. A long time ago, before you and me were born, there were over 1,000 mound sites. They call them earthworks. 1,000 across Michigan. Michigan wasn't unique in this. They had them in Ohio. They had them in Illinois, Indiana, Pennsylvania. They had them all over. So when you talk about Bigfoot research, you're really going down that real dark tunnel, and you got to be prepared for this. So the talk was that the purpose for annihilating the existential danger these groups felt in Michigan was because they were evil. The prairie people were evil. And one of the chiefs a long time ago said that there were so many prairie people in Michigan that they were like leaves on a tree. Think about that. This is Michigan back in the 1700s, earlier, 1600, anytime, except for now. And it must have had a lot more trees than it does now, because there's, large portions of Michigan are populated and developed and all this kind of stuff. But I kind of think about if what the old Native Indians said, the leaves on a tree, that would be like you or me walking on a beach and taking up a handful of sand and saying, John, how many grains of sand do you see in my hand, brother? Right. Tell me how many. It's right. Impossible. And so that's where all of this stuff goes. That's where all of this stuff goes.
So did they have a description of these prairie people?
Well, no, but I can tell you that some of the earliest researchers, explorers of this territory, this was the Northwest Territory, all of Great Lakes. You're from Michigan or Ohio. Is that correct, John? Ohio?
From Ohio. I live in Indiana now.
Okay. Indiana, Ohio. All of this area used to be Wayne County, Michigan at one time. It used to be the Northwest Territory. For goodness sakes, if I knew this when I was just a little boy, third grade, I would be the star. I always thought that Northwest Territory was Oregon, right?
Right.
Washington, Oregon. And so this was all Northwest Territory before it became a state, before Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, and it was Northwest Territories. So there's another piece that goes back to the 1600s where it is said that an Indian chief in Upper Michigan heard stories from warriors of these hairy men, stinky men, stinky, hairy men. Now, going back even earlier than that, there is some writings by some of the French furriers and the traders and missionaries that talk about these hairy creatures that would bother and attack these people out of the bush. And they gave them a different name. They gave them a French name, Rougarou or something. And all of that is the same thing. There's talk that before the coward General Hull surrendered to the British, they not only had to fight with the Indians and the British, they had to fight with these hairy animals that kept climbing up the palisades and the sides of the walls of the forts to steal food and stuff. Yeah, so this goes way, way back. And the more I look at this, the more I'm convinced that this goes back to the time of before Christ. And when I look at this stuff, there's a thing I was telling you off air about Rod Steiger, the famous science fiction writer.
Yeah.
In a notation by him, he refers to crazy bears. And in that is a story of a journal that was collected from some individual's grandpa back in the 1800s who wrote about Indians in his Kentucky home state that he called Crazy Bear. And he listened to the story, and what the Indians were telling him was that they seen Bears flying on these stars that landed in these valleys and stuff. And they seen these hairy bears walking out of these things, these craft. And the grandfather went with these Indians, and they took him to a cave where these supposed bears were at. And he talked about that. Rod Steiger wrote about that. And that was the crazy bears.
Wow. Wow.
This is
So before we get too far away from your encounter,
mm-hmm,
I had some notes I wanted to ask you about here.
mm-hmm,
When you said that you heard the cracking sound,
mm-hmm.
do you think that was a tree knock, or do you think it was like an actual branch breaking?
Hindsight is wonderful because we have the wonderful ability to sit back and think, clear-minded without the stressors, the flies, the annoyances, and all this the heat and all this kind of stuff. I thought about that a lot of times. And the tree that we seen, big tree, John, big enough that you couldn't step over it. I couldn't step over it. You'd have to hoist yourself up, scooch on your butt over that thing. It was so big. I'm not certain that was a tree, that wasn't a tree falling.
Really?
The cracks were that loud. We
Wow.
didn't feel I didn't hear any thuds. I don't remember hearing any big thuds or feel any vibration or anything, but I can't explain what would have made those sounds. That was certainly not a wood knock. It was a crack. It was some of those cracks that you hear, especially in a thick forest that's quiet, would sound like a gunshot. They're that loud.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then how far away were you from the creature that you saw?
I would say about 30 feet.
Wow.
Close enough to clearly see it. Close enough to get the feeling that it was looking dead straight at me. And that was probably the most uncomfortable part about this. And after this experience, I reached out to Janet Carter, and I asked her, I says, because I heard this from somebody, Val, because I mentioned in my earlier iterations that it felt as though they were looking through my heart, looking through my soul. If you read some of the books, I don't know what kind of books you read and stuff, but I used to read a lot of different books. The staring, that's something stares at you and you get that uncomfortable feeling, you get those chilly bumps, you get those tinglies and stuff like that. That's familiar to me. Over the years, I've run into some pretty bad people. Bad. You know it, you feel it, you know it. And they look through you with those dead black eyes. It feels as though they were peering into your soul, and that's not good. And so I asked Janice about that, and she said, "Oh no," she says, "they were checking you out." I says, "No," she says, "they were reading you." I says, "What do you mean reading me?" They were checking to see what kind of person you were, Val. You were a good person or a bad person. Maybe if I was a bad person, maybe I wouldn't be here talking about this today with anybody.
Right.
But I got to say this. I've had a wonderful opportunity to see both sides of Sasquatch. And I mean bad sides. People, talk about, well, we fed Sasquatch blueberries and pancakes and we hold hands and sing and, tralala-dee, tralala-da. Well, do you really want to hear about the other side? Because it's not all about that. There's some very wicked, violent stuff out there. And so I went back to Janice again. I said, "What do you mean reading me?" Yeah, they wanted to see, they were curious. They wanted to see what kind of person you were. Well, I don't know that that's good either. Something like that, a beast looking at you to see what kind of person you are. So I walk away.
Did you get the impression, looking at these, and maybe after looking into these creatures, do you feel that they're more human or more animal?
Well, I'll answer that with what I know now. But what I learned and what I know is that females and males, people, humans, have an equal amount of DNA in our body. You have in your body, as well as mine, I have an equal part of daddy's DNA and mama's DNA. The mitochondrial DNA comes from the mama, and that's the most important DNA that identifies us, that tells us who we are, where we came from. Daddies, unfortunately, we don't have that. We're part of my children's DNA. They know who the daddy is, and wherever my ancestry comes from is part of them. And that's the way life is. DNA is our roadmap of who we are, where we came from. When we start talking about Sasquatch and things of that nature, and I cringe when people say they're people. They're people. They're not people. They're not people. They might come from another cosmic order than us, from a different planet, but they're not people. Supposedly, they have half of a mother's DNA, which is human. But when it comes to the father's DNA, there's something missing. There's something missing. They only have a portion of a male, and nobody can say, well, that was a human male. They don't know what it is. There's a big question mark there. So that's a puzzle that I guess we're not supposed to solve. And I don't know that we really want to know, because deep down inside, I think we all have suspicions, what we think we know.
Do you are you on board with the possible Nephilim connection?
Yes. I recognize that. I do.
Yeah.
I guess when people bring up that word, it to some people, it would invoke conviction, right? Spiritual conviction. Everybody knows the difference between right and wrong. Remember what I said. We were given free will as a human being, as a person. That's the gift of life that we were given. Everybody was given this. You can go out and color your hair green or purple or a tattoo and earrings and stuff like that. But you were given free will. That's not how you came into this world, but you were given free will to make choices. And so, I would like to think that my legacy is helping people and sharing this with people. Whatever cause, whatever means it is, for whatever good it is, hopefully there's some good in it. That's what I see myself, John. Yeah. Because God knows I've seen a lot of bad. I don't want I don't like that. I don't like the negativity. I don't like the bad. I don't like fighting with people. I don't like the drama. I don't like any of that stuff. But
Right.
it is a pretty tough, and I'm not paid to do this. This is just something that you get involved in this, and this is like an addiction. Anybody that's ever battled with substance abuse and stuff like that, when you get into researching, and the more you read, the more you know, the more you get pulled down into this rabbit hole. In some aspects, John, I've commented a few times about if somebody wrote a book, if somebody really, really with some deep introspect thought about Bigfootery, they would see that Bigfootery is involved and goes into cloak and dagger, real murky, dark stuff, murder, corruption, all kinds of stuff. Now, some of the things that when I talk to people, they want to tell me how wonderful and beautiful Sasquatches are, beautiful and all this kind of stuff. And I'm asking them, I says, when in this lifetime or the other, do you know angels that come up and scream and scare people half to death and put them in such state of fear that they have post-traumatic syndrome? Where do you see that? Where do you know that angels lurk in the darkness and peek at you, in your windows, or take your animals and eat them and stuff like that? It doesn't happen. There's a lot of contradictory stuff out there. There's a lot of stuff know about Sasquatch and Bigfoot that's being erased and sanitized out of public view every day. And if there isn't more people like me to document this stuff, who knows? Generations from now, people won't know anything. They will not know anything because it won't be found. It will not be found ever. So that's what I got to say about that.
I think I read somewhere that it only takes one generation for people to lose a skill or information.
Mm-hmm.
So
one
you
generation.
See that, yeah, you see that with the generation now. They struggle even making a telephone call. Lost that ability.
And if some of this that I say is in error, think about it. A very, very wealthy Texas oil man who got involved in Bigfootery and called for and did a lot, and I think he financed a lot of explorations that some of the more popular names in Bigfootery acclaim to. But anyways, he made some kind of discovery that was supposed to be hot plate information, and he called for press and all this kind of stuff, and he was going to just shatter the earth with this information. Well, on his way to that press conference, I don't know if it was a private plane or what, the plane disintegrates in the air. And there's
Just
a pretty
coincidence.
Well, I mean, how many times have you seen this over the years? What do they say about that? Plane crashes and stuff like that. I know from one of the well-known Bigfoot researchers commented on that point. The plane and this fella on the plane, and he said when that occurred, it was like the plane disintegrated in the air. What a coincidence. I don't believe in coincidences.
Right. Neither do I.
Not at all. Not at all.
Yeah.
So I seen somebody had some pictures of early Patterson Gimlin. And in some of those pictures, those early colored pictures, there were pictures of individuals that I interpret to be wearing military fatigues and stuff. And there was some kind of paragraph or something on there that said something about some belonging to some unknown, undescribed lettered agency. So when I say cloak and dagger, very dark, murky kind of stuff, that's Bigfootery. And that brings us back to what's with this word of why do authorities refer to Sasquatch as bears and not Sasquatch? Because it's opportunity. Who could have planned that any better? We'll blame it on the bears. And I promised that I would share a story with you that occurred in Michigan. Somebody that was gifting. I don't like gifting, and I don't encourage people to do it.
Yeah,
because
I've never heard it. Like you occasionally hear people say, "Oh, I got a gifting site," and but as soon as you stop, it's just like any animal, or even a child. When you stop doing these things for them, they're going to throw a temper tantrum.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly what happens.
I don't suggest anybody do gifting either.
No. Now look, if you know anything about Sasquatches, Bigfoots, I think most of us would agree they've been around a long, long time, long before McDonald's, long before barbecue ribs. You follow me? Chicken, barbecue chicken, and all that, peanut butter, jelly, and all that stuff. And so, in a nasty sort of way, when I'm talking to people and they argue about, I'm wrong, gifting is good. We give them apples and peanut butter and honey and all kinds of stuff. And I tell them, to me, gifting is a lot like these public toilets. You understand what I'm saying? You got nasty people that will go there and dirty up the place and then run off and leave it. I don't know if they think it's funny or they're not cultured or what, but they leave it for somebody else to clean up. I'll leave that mess there for John. When John comes in here, he's going to be a surprise little fellow. I don't know about you, but I don't like that. That's disgusting. That's dirty. And that's unfair to people. We're human beings first. And what do I mean by that? Because when you start gifting, you sign that, whether you know it or not, you sign that contract with that Sasquatch. Baby, I'm going to feed you. I'm going to find these 30-ounce jars of peanut butter the rest of your life. See, right here. Right here's the peanut butter, or right here's the honey. But that's me. That's my contract to you. And when you do something like that, when you sign your soul over to the devil like that, you're going to pay the price. There might come a time when the person, is sick, he's ailing, or she is ailing, she can't get out there at that particular time and leave that peanut butter or leave that honey. Well, guess what? You start to rage. And they know where you live. They follow you home. You think you're going to go out there and play around and go into somebody's living room and play around with them. You leave a scent. You leave your mark. And they know where you live. And it doesn't matter if you live 50 miles or 20 miles or 10 miles away. They know where you live. And they may visit you. You visit us, we visit you back. Now, you forgot to leave that peanut butter? Well, here, I'm just going to leave you a little reminder. They might come around at 3 o'clock in the morning and pound on the side of your house, scratch your house, scare you to death. And your neighbors, yeah, them too. We'll turn that rage on them too. And now they got bears, so-called bears, complaints all over the place. So the story in Michigan is this. Individual is gifting peanut butter, so much peanut butter to his spot that jokingly we say that he caused a shortage in the area, took all the peanut butter out of Walmarts and everything else. But anyways, and they like crunchy peanut butter. So anyways, so much peanut butter.
I must not be a
Constantly.
Sasquatch then, because I don't like crunchy peanut butter.
You don't. So he leaves this peanut butter out there, and he's, we talk back and forth, and it's not a good deal. It's not a good idea to do this. But if you're going to do this, because he tells me sometimes, well, I go there to the gift spot and I see my empty container. Something with dexterity took that top off that bottle, and I had a great big finger swath in that peanut butter, like somebody was tasting it or something was tasting it. Sometimes the jar and everything is gone. Sometimes he's able to find the jar some distance away. Other times not. I says, why don't you, if you're going to do that, I'm not saying you should do that, because you're going to do whatever you want to do anyway. But if you're going to do that, put your initial on it so that you know it's yours and not somebody else's. Well, he did that. And one time he says, hey, Val, a strange thing happened. I go to my gift spot, go to park my truck, and there's trail cams all around there. Okay. What about it? Well, the other day I went there and there was a bunch of people standing around my truck like they wanted to talk to me. And he says, I'm a pretty big dude and I'm carrying a gun and I don't want to get out and talk to them because I don't want them to be, making something out of this. So I'd rather not talk to them. I says, well, you should have just stopped and said hello and engage what you think is going on and what do you think that they're there for. No, I'm not going to do it. Okay. Next time he goes out, he says, Val, you're not going to believe this. I said, what? He says, I get back to my truck after leaving my gifts, the peanut butter, and I see a business card on my windshield. And it's from the Michigan DNR agent. Call this number. I says, well, you better call him. He called him. He says, yeah, I called him, and she said, are you so-and-so? Yes, I'm so-and-so. Okay. I'm just letting you know that some of the neighbors down the street, down the road there, are complaining. Some of them have sold their homes. Why? Because they're all complaining that bears are coming around their house, pounding on the sides of their house. And he says, yeah, bears. Yeah, bears. This is midwinter. He says, the lady said that the bears, yeah, the lady says some of the homeowners that are selling their property complain that their motion detectors are going off at all hours of the morning. They hear pounding on the side of the house, and the bears are coming around throwing empty peanut butter containers at the house.
Them bears with their hands and being able to throw things.
Yes.
Daggone bears.
Yes.
You got Yogi the bear in Michigan, apparently.
So I see, this is not exclusive to Michigan again. This is all over North America, gifting. People sell the property cheap. They got nice property. They want to get out of there quick. I mean, they started something, and they're not going to tell the new buyers what they got going on. They started this stuff. It's like selling a house that you know that's got ghosts in it. You just sell it. You let the new owners find out for themselves. Maybe you do it intentionally, maybe not. Maybe you don't know yourself. But when you start something with Sasquatch like that, it's not good to leave a mess that you created to somebody else that knows nothing about it, had nothing to do with it. It's just not, John, it's not right. It's not fair to people.
Right.
We're all human beings. It's not right. So those are some of the more interesting things. Earlier today, we were talking about, somebody commented, made a funny about a Sasquatch looking like some of the people that he's seen at the rest areas. And I shared with him, and I explained to him, from my point of view, a lot of reports of sightings and encounters come from OTRs, over the road drivers.
Absolutely.
That's a fact. That is a fact. There's reports of truck drivers gone missing. They sleep in their cabs. They have to document downtime. That's law. I think that's universal law pretty much everywhere now. So they have to sleep and document that. There's cases where truck drivers have been pulled out of their truck. Some of them have been found drowned. Some of them have never been found. But in this particular case, this happened in Canada. A truck driver, over the road truck driver, driving a tractor trailer, big tractor trailer, pulls off the highway into a rest area. There was already a female parked there with a small child sitting on a picnic booth waiting for her time to get into the bathrooms and stuff. In any event, another driver comes in, but they all talk about the abandoned car that's on the ingress of this rest area as you pull off the highway. It's just stopped in the middle of the road. Engine running, car door open. They can't explain this, but that's an annoyance. You have to find a way to drive around this to get into the parking lot. At some point, another motorist pulls in, and his attention is drawn across the divided highway up a burn in a heavily forested area. And there, the truck driver and the mama with the baby all look. And what they reported as seen was a Sasquatch type beast animal carrying what it looked like, or carrying a person with clothes. And there you see the car, the empty car with the car door open. And this is a human being that is taken away.
Oh,
Everybody jumps into their cars, their vehicles, their trucks, and they flee. They didn't see nothing. They don't want to know nothing. And, and this is how the reports are made.
Wow.
So, and there's a lot of cases like this that occur. Again, when I say there's two sides of Sasquatch, there's the side where, you sing and you laugh and you giggle, you eat blueberries and eat strawberries and sing and walk together. And then there's the other side. A lot of people aren't comfortable with knowing or hearing about the other side, but there is another side.
Kind of like people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you got the good ones, you got the bad ones.
Yes.
And that goes with any animal too.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up on a farm. We had horses that you couldn't get in the pen with. And then other ones would follow you around like a dog.
Mm-hmm. Very docile.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. How much do you think those horses weigh?
Average about 1,000 pounds. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How would you explain horses having broken backs and thrown in trees.
Right. Right.
That's an area of Bigfootery that I look at also. Objects I call trophies and ornaments. I mean, at Christmas time, we decorate the tree as a custom, pretty much everybody's custom. We decorate the trees with ornaments and stuff like that. When and this is Bigfoot research. I mean, this is what it is. This is the heart of the stuff. This is the stuff that a lot of people, they can't handle this stuff. You tell them this stuff, and you better be prepared to show them, because sometimes it's just not enough that you tell people. You have to show them too. And even when you show them, they absolutely lose their eggs over it. They can't handle this stuff. They just shut down. They just absolutely shut down.
You talk about the decorations, and I may have to cut this. I'm going to have to talk to Matthew about it.
Mm-hmm.
He's the host of Drunken Cryptids,
Mm-hmm.
and he's been doing he's got a research area,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not sure if he's made this public or not. So if this part doesn't make the cut, you'll know why.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They found like a vertebrae, and so it's hollow in the center, and it's hanging on a stick on a tree, like up in a tree.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, what does that? It would have to be something with hands, but it goes back to what you're talking about, the decoration.
Is this animals you're talking about? A deer?
Yeah, they
elk?
think it was like a deer vertebrae.
Yeah.
But it was like they took it and found it and just stuck it on a branch or a twig hanging off this tree.
I did a thread about this. Items found in trees, or maybe I titled it "Found in Trees." I also did a thread about ornaments and trophies. And when you look at some of the most heinous crimes that people have committed, I mean, I'm talking about the very bad. Some of these demented individuals use objects as trophies to relive that thrill, that excitement in the moment. You've got good and you've got bad Sasquatch. That's something that was even mentioned in some of the more popular, more read Sasquatch authors, some of the books that they wrote, some of the publications that they wrote. And I think even I'll include Pallades. I had a piece in one of his books, and I've probably read, and I've got 4 or 5 of them here, and I've read every one of those a couple times over. And in at least one of those books, he mentions a case where a little child was missing a couple days, more than one day. If I remember correctly, it was like 3 days or something. Searchers are out looking, the usual stuff. Searchers are looking. The boy, in one of the cases, in this case, the boy was found, and he claims that what he remembers was that he was taken to a cave, and inside the cave there were dusty purses, guns, all kinds of stuff. And this Sasquatch that talked to him, he kept calling it Grandma, because it took on the face of Grandma. And it tried to get him to respond as though he was talking to grandma. And when he hesitated, the way the little boy explains it, if I remember correctly, it seemed like it blew a fuse, like it wasn't capable of responding to that because it was only engineered and only programmed for one response. And the way I interpreted that, it was like it was robotic. It was, like Lost in Space. You remember the robot swinging the arms? You can't compute.
Danger, Will Robinson.
Danger, yeah. So I take note of that. I take note of some of the stuff that I read by, I don't remember the author's name now. It escapes me, but he or she says that these people that believe that they communicate with Sasquatch are told that there are different types of Sasquatch. There's some that are very, very bad. There's some that they're not even living beings. Like I think they implied they were robotic, mechanical of sort. I know
I've heard that theory as well.
Yes,
they're some kind of like meat suit.
Yeah, I know this is strange for people and stuff like that, but again, I have to reiterate this. This is a deep, deep, dark rabbit hole that you go into when you start looking at this stuff. There's a couple cases in Michigan where, close to the area that I had my experience, that they shared with an author that before they had their encounter, they smelled like burned brakes. You know what that smells like?
Yep, like a metallic smell.
Yeah,
like that.
And even rubber.
Yeah,
they seen
sulfur.
Yeah,
sulfur would be along the same line.
Yeah, they seen a Sasquatch. They thought it was a Sasquatch, and before it attacked them, they found themselves back in their bed again with mud on their feet, as though they were outside. There's a lot of that kind of stuff in Bigfootery. The fact that some witnesses say, I talked to Bigfoot and Bigfoot tells me that, there's some dangerous hombres out there walking around among us. And you need to be aware of that. And so I look at some of these things that some of the tells, the motifs, the symbols left behind at some of these things, especially when we're talking about trophies and items found in trees. What I look at personally is cases where humans are found in trees. Yes. And they have some of the same type of injuries that animals sport. And I'm talking about the broken necks. When you see animals being reported with broken necks, that's common, that's typical. That's classic Bigfoot. That's what they do. Yeah. They're experts at that. When you see them in a tree like that, that is classic. As a gumshoe guy, that's what I look at.
So I know I'm going to have people ask me this. You're from Michigan. Where do you stand on Dogman?
You know what? I don't go there.
Okay.
I don't go there, and it's not because I want to alienate anybody. I've never seen them. I can't tell you that they exist. I've seen pictures that look pretty convincing. To me, to go there, John, that's invoking whatever evilness that is, if they do exist. And I don't want to bring that into me. I don't want to bring it into my life. It's just someplace I don't go.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough.
In this place, you draw a line someplace. I don't
Right.
go here. You don't come here. That's the way it rolls, bro.
Right. Right. Well, we've been going for about an hour and 25 minutes. I think this is probably a good place to try to wrap up.
Sure.
So why don't you tell everybody where they can find you?
I'm located on Facebook, and anybody that's interested, they can come and lurk if they want. They can find me at Michigan Bigfoot Reports and Data, semicolon, Gumshoe Guy's Corner. Gumshoe Guy is me. By the way, people say, what is Gumshoe Guy? You know, in a long time before telephones, computers, and all this kind of stuff, picture yourself in the 1940s, maybe the 1930s, when private detectives actually walked. They didn't drive a car. A lot of people didn't have cars. You walked. If you wanted to really get someplace and investigate something, you hailed a cab from outdoors. Take a cab. The parlance Gumshoe Guy comes from the fact that in the summer days, for a private detective in the summer in the cities, their worth was measured by the amount of gum that was stuck on the soles of their shoe. Gumshoe Guy. There you go.
I wondered where that term came from.
You were
That
a
makes
second-class citizen, brother. Listen, it was a riot being here today. I appreciate it, John. You know what? You're a good host. You're
Thank
a good,
you.
mellow
I appreciate
host, and
that.
I know you're going to go far and do a lot of things and stuff. I really hope that your listening audience found something interesting in this chit chat and stuff. You collect a lot of attention and a lot of subscribers over this. I really do.
Appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
And this was a fun interview. Maybe we can do it again sometime.
Anytime, just holler at me. I'm there.
All right. Well, I appreciate it, Val.
Thank you, my
And
friend.
if you've had a paranormal encounter, cryptid encounter, UFO encounter, I want to hear it. You can email me at mythsandmullets@gmail.com. Find me on Facebook. Look me up on Spotify, YouTube, basically anywhere you get your podcast. And until next time, I'll talk to you later. Gotta go.
Thank you. Go Lions.
Once again, thanks to Elite Mounts for the new episode format. If you like this format better than the way I was doing it before, where we do the housekeeping here at the end, let me know in the comments. Make sure you're checking out all the descriptions on all my videos. Down below, you're going to find a list of all my favorite podcasts. Nevermore Hollows, Drunken Cryptids, Chumming with the Spirits, Ghost Gossip. So many great podcasts. I like them. I think you're going to enjoy them. Give them a listen. Myths, Monsters, and Mullets is proud to be a part of Midnight Realm Radio. It's an internet radio station featuring podcasts from the paranormal to true crime. And it runs 24 hours, 7 days a week. You can find a link down below in the description. I really do appreciate all the support I've been getting over the last couple months. If you haven't yet, make sure you're hitting that subscribe button. Like, comment, share, tell a friend about the show. That's the only way we can continue to grow. And once again, if you have a paranormal encounter you'd like to share and you'd like to be on the show, you can email me at mythsandmullets@gmail.com. Good night, everyone.
Shadow in the pines lurking in the dusky air. Bigfoot stomps through the woods like he don't care. Lights in the sky flash green then blue. Aliens descending with a secret or two. Whispers in the breeze, cold fingers down your spine. Ghosts in the graveyard, twisting through time. Eyes wide open in the dead of night. The myths and monsters giving one hell of a fright. Oh, Myths, Monsters, and Mullets podcast, spinning wild tales of a future and a past. Hosted by John Methenkamp's fiery soul. takes us where the wild unknown flows. Oh, Miss Monsters and Mullets podcast, spinning wild tales of a future and a past. Hosted by John Methan Campfire Soul. He takes us where the wild unknown flows. Down by the bayou, you hear a raspy growl. Swamp gas glowing as the coyotes howl. A UFO